Hi sir, my name is Azrael Maliotic, ng Bachelor of Science in Agribusiness Management. So for today's video, I would like to explain the fabrications and identifications of wholesale and retail cuts of livestock and poultry carcasses. So in this topic, the extent of meat cutting and fabrications performed in professional kitchens today depends on the philosophy and goals of the questions. So some restaurants, because of the consistency and simplicity, prefer to purchase portion cuts. So on the opposite end of the spectrum, some chips today are adapting whole animal utilizations and prefer purchasing carcasses or side of meats to use in various menu applications. So the success of a meat cutting program depends on the quality control, food cost control, and product utilizations. So it requires knowledgeable person skilled at accurately cutting meats, poultry, fish, and shellfish, plus cooks and dedicated on using not just for the prime cuts but under utilized cuts, trim, and bone for other culinary applications. So in this topic, butchering is very commonly used for the process of slaughtering. So on preparing meat for retail or wholesale, use meat cutting. So or fabrications is the process of cutting, so boning and portioning large cuts of meat. So to know specifications, becoming proficient and fabricating whole carcasses or primal meat cuts takes practice, often through a partnership under a master meat cutter. So these carcasses are processed whole, split into sides, so or cuts in the quarters, fore and hind quarters. So most often carcasses are fabricated into a primal cuts of meat. This is a large cuts based on the muscle and bone structure of the animal. So from their meat is further divided into subprimal primal cuts, so that are often vacuum sealed and boxed, fresh, and frozen. So and the origin of the term box meats, or the meats are processed further into portions cut as needed. So which is the shoulder arm bone, shoulder blade bone, rib bone, loin T-bone, and breast spare rib bone, and hips bones, and also the leg round bone. So the skeletal and muscle structure, there are 7 major bones in the skeleton that aid in meat identifications. So on fabrications, each of these 7 bones are found in relations to one of the major muscle into the carcass, say skeletal meat chart. So the primal cuts, there are 4 major primal cuts: the shoulder, rib, loin, and leg. So it's found on all animals' carcasses, but depending on the species, there are some difference in aiming and fabricating these cuts. So for example, a beef chuck is the same cuts as lamb shoulder. So or pork shoulder butt, a beef front is the same as veal leg, and a pork is ham. So there are comparisons of meat cut names. So in the beef, it includes the chuck, rib, foreloin, round, and pit. So and the lamb and veal, it includes the shoulder, hot rack, loins, saddle, leg, and breast. So in the pork, shoulder, back, picnic shoulder, loin, ham, and belly. So in the subprimal and portion cats derived from the primal cats. So the learnings that appearance and the formations of major cats along with the basic structures. So it helps the fabricating as well as cooking. So the see specific meat charts on beef, veal, pork, and lamb for the names of locations of primal, subprimal, and portion cat. So in the beef carcass, so they include there are roast which includes is choke, bleed, road, arm, and also there are sticks which is choke, tinder, flat iron, and prime rib, roast, and rib steak, short ribs. So the sticks club, it includes the club, T-bone, porterhouse, stripe loin, tenderloin, and the top sirloin sticks, glutes sticks, and tripe tip roast. So in the roast outside is bottom round, inside the top round. So the ankle, eye of round, rump, hand, and shank. So those are the beef carcasses. So there are several minor primal cats found on each type of carcass. So which is are usually fabricated differently depending on the animal and its size. So for example, on a beef carcass, the brisket, plate, and flank are separated into the distinct cuts. But on veal carcass is kept whole as bone in and veal breast. So in the veal carcass, there are the veal carcass. There are the parts of veal carcass. So which is include the loins, shoulder roast, shoulder chops, cube stick, stew meat, ground meat, and the rib roast, rib chops, loin roast, loin chops, and also the leg roast, scallopinal, and cutlets, and since. So and also the four shank, cruise cat's shank, so boneless, breast, cube stick. So in the leg, sirloin, and hind shank, cruise cat, and shank. So the lamb shank and pork hocks or shank are often cooked and served whole. So the veal and beef shank are usually cross-cut for braces of soups. So in the lamb carcass, there are the parts which is the neck, shoulder, foreshank, leg, sirloin, and leg sirloin, and the breast. So the pork carcass breakdown in the notably different from beef, veal, and lamb. So whereas beef, veal, and lamb split the rib, loin, muscle between the 12 and 13 rib. The pork carcass fabrications leave this muscle so intact and names of the simplify the loin. So the pork back ribs are marketed for the barbecuing. So the pork belly is much more prominent cuts, producing bacon and spare ribs. So the pork shoulder is split into two cuts. So the shoulder butt and the picnic shoulder. So the jaw and produce a type of bacon. So and the excessive fat often found along the backside of the animal is used fat back or rendered or lard. So the leg known as ham is often crowed and sometimes smoked. So in the portion cuts, beef full loin is an example of the primal cuts. So from the beef loin, three major primal cuts are produced. So the strip loin, the sirloin, and the tenderloin. So a strip loin will yield new New York stripes sticks, and if left on the bone can be portions cut into T-bone. So and the porterhouse sticks. So the tenderloin will yield fillets. So the medallions of so the sirloin yields top. The sirloin's beef each muscle eventually is portion cuts, whether raw or as it and the example of roast after cooking. So they start with a clean stations and practice high standards of sanitation when cutting the meats. So keep the product cold, and if needed place it on pan of ice. So some operations will have temperature. So to control rooms to keep the meats cold. So it's also important to have the right tools that are properly sharp and honing steels handy. So the meat are fabricated or ordered according to the specifications of an operations. So based on the operations size, usually by width, and also at times based on the thickness. So these guidelines ensure uniformity and appearance and purchasing cost. So the width tolerance also helps to achieve the consistency and the quality from the perspective of the customer satisfactions. So the charts show the generally accepted width and thickness tolerance range according to the meat buyer guide. So there are the two cutting directions, so which is the cut directions and the grain directions. So although wall muscle are fabricated without regard to the grain of the meat, so portion cuts follows the general rules of cutting across the grain of the meat. So this produce short fibers of meat that when served are easy to cut and chew. So the while some cuts are likely that the loin and tenderloin consist of full muscle that are portioned by cutting across the grain. So shoulder and leg cuts are made of mini muscle with varying degree of tenderness running in the different directions, and making it more of a challenge to portions for these cats. Some muscles can be seamed out while others are too small and are used to be for braces and stew off for and grinding. So some cuts of meat including the T-bone, sticks, pork back, ribs, and rack of lamb and shank are fabricated bone-in for the appearance and flavor. So the bone-in meat will have more intense flavor upon cooking versus the bone variety. So today there is a preference in the for boneless meat that are easy to cut without the need to separate the meat from the bone. So and the connective tissues found throughout the carcass in the form of elastin and the collagens hold in the muscle fiber. So together in bundles and also binds them the skeletal structures. So elastin is to an elastic as the name implies. So it does not breaks down in the cooking process, and therefore it is best removed. So in the fat, there are cover fat and extramuscular fat in the form of marbling. So provides the flavor and juiciness. When the marbling in the meat muscle melts during the cooking process, it provides flavor and juiciness. Cover fat on meat roast based meat naturally while cooking when the roasted fat sides up. So removing cover fat or seam the fat is necessary at times, but because it adds flavor or should be taken not to remove too much. So in poultry fabrications, techniques are similar across the different classes from the chickens to turkey and ducks. So chickens being one of the least expensive birds on the market, so is a good item to practice cutting, boning, and portioning skills because of their similarity to turkey, ducks, and peasants. Although the muscles and carcass structures is similar from one class of birds, so to another three are some difference that should be note, which is the young chicken include the frayers, roosters, corners hens, and porcines have a softer bones and cartilage, making them the easiest to fabricate. So the turkey and chicken capons are bred for their large breast milk meat, ideal for roasting, whole, or portioning into cartels, including the scalpony and singel. So the turkey legs have more tendons in their legs, so along with harder bones and cartilage. Ducks and geese have their dark meat birds, so with less breast milk. So peasants use their legs for running and resulting into tendons and cartilage along with darker meat from increased myoglobin, while the breast is relatively tender and lower in the fat and connective tissues. So the results, it gives the meat to textures and cartilage that runs along the legs. So there are the part of the skeletal and muscle structures of the chickens, so which is the skull, vertebrae, radius, ulna, humerus, pelvis, ribs, clavicle, sternum, femur, fibula, tibia, and metatarsus. So those are the parts of the chicken. So the skeletal structures as with meat cutting. So before beginning the cutting process, so examine the basic customs to be major bones and the how they integrate with the muscle. So the muscle structures are the major of bird include the breast, leg, thigh, and wings. So with the breast and the thigh being the largest of the muscles. So there's approximately 50% meat yield when removed from the bone. So the breast meat is tender due to its lean natures and lack of the connective tissues. Legs, thighs, and wings so have more tendons and connective tissues because these muscles get the more exercise. In the case of mass-produced chickens, the legs and the thighs are still relatively tender because of their confinement during the breeding. So there are the cutting directions of the poultry. So the cutting across the muscle grain is important. So full poultry processing, but less so than more for meat. So this has to do with smaller muscles and the tender natures of poultry. So when fabricating breast meat, it becomes more of factors, and cross-cut approach should be generally be observed unless the meat is being pounded of flattened for scallops of cutlets. So the thigh meat can be boned and cut into means for use the suits and stir fry. So used in the manner green directions tend to be inconsequential. So those are the poultry fabrications that I said earlier. So which is to fabricate how to catch the poultry, um, which is the chicken, turkeys, and etc. of the parts of bird. So that's all. Thank you, sir.